I never expected my life to change so drastically in an instant. You can long for something for years, only to realize, once it happens, it's not what you imagined. That realization hit me the moment I first held my son, my long-awaited child. He was minutes old, yet confusion gripped my chest. I should have felt pure joy, kissed my wife's forehead, and thanked fate for making me a father. Instead, dread crept in. His features, his hair, his eyes, the curve of his lips didn't resemble me. I told myself newborns can look generic, that it was the hospital lighting, but something felt off. Rachel, exhausted and drenched in sweat, lay back on the pillow. The delivery had been rough, so I swallowed my doubts. I forced a smile. "He's here, Rach. Our prayers have been answered." She only nodded, her eyes filled with love, but also something else. Caution, as if she were studying my reaction. That was the moment I should have known something was terribly wrong. We'd been married just shy of 6 years. For the first 5, Rachel and I tried to conceive. We visited countless specialists, sat under the scrutiny of fertility doctors, endocrinologists, and counselors, hoping someone might pinpoint an issue. We tested every angle, her hormone levels, her ovulation cycle, my seeds count. Each result returned a big normal. Nothing. Every test declared we were both perfectly capable of producing a child. Yet the years slipped by without a single pregnancy. Month after month, heartbreak followed heartbreak as her period arrived. We grew increasingly desperate. One afternoon, maybe 3 years into our marriage, Rachel came to me with an idea. She was wringing her hands and wearing the anxious expression she got whenever she was worried I would oppose her. "Daniel," she said softly, "maybe we should consider using a donor." Her words rattled in my chest. I already knew what she meant. Donor seed. Even though I had no medical evidence that I was the problem, the possibility that she might not trust my fertility gnawed at me. But more than that, I wanted our child to be ours. I wanted to pass on my grandmother's green eyes or my father's stubborn chin. The thought of raising a child with another man's DNA made me uneasy. My immediate response was harsh, though I tried to soften it. "No," I said, shaking my head. "I'm sorry, Rachel, that's not an option for me. Let's keep trying on our own. One of these days, God willing, something will click." She stared at me a long moment with those dark, searching eyes. "But it's been years. And the doctors keep saying everything is normal. Why can't we—" "No," I repeated more firmly, all the while feeling a pang of guilt in my gut. "I can't do that." She didn't argue further. Something about her subdued acceptance should have clued me in that she had a plan brewing. But I pushed any suspicions away, content to have the final word. We tried for a child month after month, heartbreak after heartbreak. Just as we neared hopelessness, Rachel missed her period and tested positive. That day was the happiest of my life. I dropped to my knees, tears in my eyes. 5 years of prayers had been answered. The pregnancy went smoothly, with typical nausea and exhaustion, but Rachel insisted on attending appointments alone. "You're working so hard, Daniel, it's just a routine ultrasound," she reassured me. I wanted to be there, but felt guilty missing work, so I let it go, never suspecting a deeper reason. Then came the big day. After a grueling labor, Jason was born. His first cry filled the room. When the nurse placed him in my arms, a strange unease gripped me. I tried to ignore it, but the feeling wouldn't fade. Back home, I drowned my doubts in fatherly devotion, feeding, changing diapers, singing lullabies. Rachel rested, eyes lighting up at Jason but flickering with worry whenever she looked at me. I dismissed it as postpartum anxiety. Still, something gnawed at me. Jason's hair was darker, wavier. His ears had a shape unfamiliar to mine. Babies change, I told myself. I waited, hoping to see even a trace of myself in my son. But that moment never came. Weeks turned into months. The more Jason's features developed, the less he looked like me. It wasn't just mild differences. It was to the point that strangers commented. An acquaintance might visit and say, "Oh, he must take after your wife's side." Or, "Is your wife's father from a different ethnicity?" I loathed these moments, forcing a smile and a nod while my stomach roiled. Meanwhile, Rachel was strangely protective of him, even from me. In subtle ways, she seemed to flinch whenever I studied Jason's face too long. I started to wonder if maybe she had gone behind my back and used a seed donor. It was the only plausible explanation that stuck in my mind. At first, I rejected the notion. Rachel wouldn't do that, would she? But the more the child grew, the more the idea haunted me. If that was the truth, though, why wouldn't she just say so? She'd see how desperate I was for a child. Maybe she assumed I'd never accept it. My anxiety grew, overshadowing the joys of fatherhood. Then, one evening, as I was finishing up tidying the living room, I caught Rachel staring intently at a photograph on her phone. She looked haunted. It was a shot of an older man with a strong jaw, a slight smirk, and dark wavy hair. Before I could glimpse the name on the screen, she quickly turned it off. I pretended not to notice. But that fleeting glimpse unsettled me deeply. Could that be the seed donor? A few nights later, at around 2 a.m., Jason woke up crying. I picked him up from the crib, pressed him to my shoulder, and tried humming a lullaby. In the soft glow of the nightlight, I examined his small, sleeping face. Suddenly, I saw a passing resemblance to someone I'd never considered before. Rachel's late ex-husband, Ethan. He had passed away in a tragic accident a couple of years before Rachel and I reconnected, or so I'd heard. She never gave me many details, only that it had been a painful ordeal. At first, I scolded myself for even thinking it. That's insane, Daniel. He's been dead a long time. You're just letting fear run wild. Still, something about that tiny nose and those eyebrows conjured an image of Ethan's face that Rachel had once shown me in a worn old photo. I distinctly remembered that man's unwavering stare. I'd never felt comfortable seeing pictures of her with Ethan, but since he was gone, how could he be a threat? Nevertheless, my heart pounded at the possibilities. I was so shaken by the thought that I put Jason back down and retreated to the living room, sat on the couch, and stared at the darkness for hours. I started investigating discreetly. I searched the house whenever Rachel ran errands, looking through drawers, rummaging through old boxes in the attic. I told myself it was all silly paranoia. You'll find nothing, and you'll feel like an idiot. But I had to check. It was in a dusty, half-broken trunk in the farthest corner of our basement storeroom that I stumbled on something horrifying. A set of documents labeled Genome Preservation, dated years before I'd married Rachel. The heading alone sent a chill through my veins. Northwest Cryogenics and Fertility, Sperm Preservation. The name on the form read Ethan Anderson. The date was from months before his death. The form included sections about posthumous usage, storage conditions, and glaring disclaimers that read, release only to spouse or authorized partner named below. My hands shook so violently I could barely hold the folder. Ethan's seeds had been preserved and authorized to be used by Rachel. There were multiple forms, some from just after his death, others from more recent checkups that indicated Rachel had visited the cryobank for consultations. These visits took place while we were still married, some even during the time we were actively trying to conceive. A pit formed in my stomach. This was beyond anything I'd imagined. If these documents were correct, Rachel had impregnated herself with Ethan's seeds, her dead ex-husband's seeds. Anger, betrayal, horror, heartbreak. My emotions came in an unrelenting wave. I felt physically sick, as if I might vomit right there on the floor. The pages rattled in my grasp. Why would she do something so deranged? Then an even sicker realization. She must have known I'd never agree. She used my desperation for a child to manipulate the situation. I could almost hear her calm voice. Don't worry, Daniel. Everything's fine. While behind the scenes, she was carrying out this twisted scheme. My mind reeled, and I found myself gasping for air. I held onto those documents as though they were evidence of a crime scene. I stuffed them into a plastic bag, marched upstairs, and locked them in my desk for safekeeping. My first impulse was to confront her immediately, but a flicker of rationality told me to wait. I needed to see if there was more to the puzzle. Also, I wanted to plan how best to handle this. The baby's first birthday loomed only a few weeks away. I decided I'd gather all the facts I could, wait until then, and deliver the truth in a single, brutal blow, if that was what it would take. From that day onward, every interaction with Rachel felt fraught with tension, especially on my side. She sensed I was increasingly distant, more secretive. She'd ask, Daniel, is something wrong? And I'd force a weak smile and shake my head. No, it's late at night, while she slept, I scoured our financial records on my laptop, found suspicious payments to Northwest Cryogenics. Her entire scheme began to unfold in front of my eyes. Over a year prior to the pregnancy, Rachel had found an open slot for a specialized procedure at a fertility clinic that cooperated with the cryobank. The payments lined up precisely with the date she told me her pregnancy was confirmed. I was both enraged and heartbroken. How could she do this? How could someone you trust so deeply manipulate you with such finality? I'd let her keep me away from her prenatal visits because I trusted her. Maybe I was a fool, but I had never guessed my own wife would impregnate herself with the deceased man's seeds, her ex-husband's, and then pass the child off as mine. I barely slept. My mind raced through 1,000 scenarios. Part of me still loved Rachel. She was the woman I'd spent half a decade trying to have a family with. But how could I even look at her now without feeling violated? I'd grown to love Jason so fiercely, yet the knowledge that his father was another man, one who wasn't even alive, tainted every joyful memory I'd formed over the past year. I felt guilt-ridden, furious, and battered by confusion. The morning of Jason's first birthday arrived under an ominous sky. The forecast called for rain. Rachel had planned a tiny gathering, just us and her parents, plus a couple of friends to watch as Jason smushed birthday cake in his face. My plan? I was going to detonate everything. I'd already arranged an appointment with my lawyer for later in the afternoon so I could finalize the legal side. I also had proof that I wasn't Jason's father, along with the cryobank records to sue her for paternity fraud. I woke early that day, quietly preparing documents I had hidden in a black briefcase. My stomach churned with dread and twisted excitement. Finally, the truth. At exactly 2 p.m., the guests started arriving in a light drizzle. Rachel's parents, George and Linda, waltzed in with big smiles and gifts. Linda pinched Jason's cheeks, cooing, "Oh, it's my precious grandson's big day." I waited in steely silence. At about 2:30, with a few other close friends gathered around, we presented the cake, white frosting, a big candle shaped like the number 1. Jason clapped his tiny hands. Rachel smiled at me, a guarded flicker in her eyes. A spark of guilt flickered in my gut. Should I really do this now at the baby's birthday? But I swallowed the doubt. She orchestrated this entire con. She can handle the embarrassment. We sang happy birthday, snapped pictures, and the baby's face was promptly covered in frosting. Then Rachel turned to me. "Daniel," she said, "do you want to say something?" She was probably expecting a sweet fatherly toast. The tension in my chest peaked. "Yes," I said, clearing my throat. I looked at the small group. "I'd like to share some news. Something about Jason's paternity." I saw the shock on Rachel's face, and her mother's eyebrows shot up. A friend from my workplace coughed uncomfortably. Rachel forced a quick laugh. "Daniel, what are you—" I cut her off. I know about Ethan's seed, Rachel," I said, my voice wavering with anger. "I found the documents in the basement, the cryobank records, the procedures, the bills. I know Jason isn't mine." A stunned silence. Rachel's parents wore matching looks of confusion. Rachel's face went ashen, her lips parted in a silent plea. Then the room exploded with noise. "What is this madness?" Linda demanded, glaring at me. "What do you mean, not yours?" Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "Daniel, please, can we talk about this privately?" She glanced around at the startled guests. "This is Jason's birthday, why—" But she couldn't finish. George, her father, snapped at me. "You're spouting nonsense. That baby is my flesh and blood son. How dare you ruin this celebration with your cheap accusations?" I refused to stop. "It's not nonsense," I said, pulling a folder from my briefcase. "I have the proof right here. Here's the cryobank contract with Ethan Anderson's name. Here's the fertility procedure date. About a year before Jason was born. These are bank statements for the procedure. I also have blood test comparisons that clearly show I'm not Jason's biological father." Everyone gawked at the papers I held. Rachel looked as if she might pass out. The tension in the air was suffocating. Jason, oblivious to the chaos, babbled and tried smearing frosting onto Rachel's sleeve. George, voice trembling, said, "Rachel, tell me this is all some misunderstanding." She gulped, tears streaming, and she finally spoke in halting words. It's complicated. I used Ethan's seeds." "But Daniel, we wanted a baby for so long, and you refused any donor." "I didn't think you'd ever accept—" "You used your ex-husband's semen?" Linda yelled, aghast. "When were you going to tell us? Oh my God!" She placed a hand on her cheek, shaky and furious. Rachel began sobbing. "You have to believe me. I did it for us. I wanted us to have a baby. And it's not like I was cheating with a living person or anything. Ethan was already gone." I cut her off with a bark of disgust. "You lied to me. You let me think Jason was mine for the entire pregnancy. You had me sign the birth certificate. You made me a legal father to someone else's child on purpose. That is the definition of paternity fraud, Rachel. We're done." Rachel collapsed to her knees, hugging Jason tightly, tears staining her cheeks. "Daniel, please," she sobbed. "We can work through this. I was going to tell you, but I was afraid you'd leave me if you knew the truth. I swear I wanted a child for our family, not just for me." I backed away, trembling with rage. Whatever you say, it doesn't matter. I've already filed for divorce. As soon as the hearing is scheduled, I'm suing you for paternity fraud. You tricked me into paying medical bills, forging paternal status. We're finished, Rachel screamed as I marched to the door. Her mother tried to block me, hissing, "What kind of man are you? Jason is your child, no matter whose material it is. You raised him for a year," her father added. "If your seed is broken, that doesn't mean you can weasel out of fatherhood. You had no proof that you weren't the problem. Maybe your so-called normal tests were inaccurate. My daughter did what she had to do. A real man would stand by his wife." Fury radiated through my veins. I clenched my fists. "Don't you dare talk about me being less of a man," I seethed. "Your daughter lied. She planned this behind my back, used her dead ex-husband's seeds, and tricked me into believing I was the father. All of you can get the hell out of my sight." George looked like he might punch me. "You're making a mistake," he growled. "You walk out that door, we will sue you for child support. That's your son, whether you like it or not." My temper snapped. I advanced on him. "You want to try me? Let's go. I've got evidence your daughter defrauded me. You'll get nowhere. Now, move." He refused to budge, so I gave him a hard shove. Linda squealed in alarm, and a friend of ours rushed forward to intervene. The guests were frantic, trying to de-escalate as I swung the front door open. Jason started wailing, apparently frightened by the yelling. Rachel was in hysterics, tears streaming, screaming, "Daniel, don't do this, please!" But I only felt numb fury. I shoved the door wide. "Everyone out of my apartment now. This party's over." Her parents continued shouting, "You're not a real husband. You can't abandon them. We'll sue you for everything." But eventually, under the stares of everyone else present, they grabbed their coats. Linda glared daggers at me. George muttered curses. Rachel, trembling, tried to approach me, but I hissed, "Don't you dare! We're done!" She sank to the couch, hugging Jason, who was still crying. Every muscle in my body tensed as I pointed at the door. "Out!" I said, voice shaking. "Both of you! Now!" Rachel swallowed hard, her cheeks wet, her eyes bloodshot. "But, Daniel, this is our home. Where will I even— This stopped being your home the moment you decided to betray me. Don't make me call the cops to forcibly remove you. Get out." She let out a choked sob, but for the sake of the wailing baby, she tried to maintain composure. She grabbed the diaper bag in her purse, and with a last devastated look over her shoulder, she walked out into the rain, hugging Jason. Hours passed in a haze. I sank onto the living room floor, the remains of Jason's birthday cake strewn across the coffee table, half-eaten. My chest felt hollow. I wanted to rage, to punch walls, but I only slumped, staring at that single leftover candle. Our child's first birthday, the day I destroyed everything. A part of me seethed. She had it coming. Another part ached with sorrow, questioning how love could possibly twist this way. I sat there, immobile, for a long time. Then, around 1 a.m., my phone rang. A friend who'd been at the party said, "Daniel, you should know Rachel's in the hospital. Some kind of breakdown. Her parents say she fainted from shock." I tightened my jaw, my mind swirling with conflicting impulses, anger, guilt, pity. "Which hospital?" I managed to ask quietly. He told me, but then hesitated. "Look, man, I get that you're furious, but maybe you should see her. This is serious." I ground my teeth and finally said, "I'll think about it," and hung up. I didn't go. I was too consumed by betrayal. My lawyer had told me earlier that evening, "Legally, you're in a very good position to sue for paternity fraud. She can't pin child support on you if you can prove this was deliberate deception. You have all the documents, correct?" "Yes," I'd said, "I do." And so I stayed put, letting the black night close in around me. My phone flashed with a few more calls, presumably from her parents, but I didn't answer. Each ring only fed my rage. The next morning, a thunderous pounding rattled my apartment door. Without checking the peephole, I yanked it open. There stood George and Linda. They looked disheveled, eyes hollow as though they had been up all night. Linda's face was streaked with tears. George's mouth was set in a grim line. George shoved a finger at my chest. "Rachel's in the hospital because of you. She was under enough stress raising a child without your support. Now you've thrown her out on the street with her baby." I stood firm. "She's there because of her own lies," I hissed. "She did this, not me." Linda pushed forward, voice dripping with fury. "Daniel, you've always been so self-righteous. Well, guess what? This is your family. Whether that child is biologically yours or not, you're married to our daughter. You have a responsibility." I laughed bitterly. "My responsibility ended the minute she decided to break our vows. You come here with your moralizing nonsense. But what about Rachel's betrayal? She did it for you both, Linda shrieked. She wanted a family. You refused a donor. If your seed is defective, my semen's not defective, I roared, my face burning. We had tests. Everything was normal. She refused to accept that sometimes fertility can take time. She took matters into her own hands with a dead man's semen. That's monstrous, and you know it. George lunged forward as if to strike me. You better watch your mouth. I squared my shoulders, heart hammering. Get out of here, both of you, I said icily. I'm not playing these games. If you want to talk, get a lawyer and come at me in court. Otherwise, stay away from my home. Linda's voice trembled with rage. You heartless man. That's your wife in the hospital, your child. Not my child, I corrected. Stop calling him that. I loved him, but now I know the truth. George raised a fist, but I caught his wrist midair. Don't, I snarled. Don't make this worse than it already is. I shoved him backward. He stumbled into Linda, who nearly fell. Linda began crying. This is how you treat us after all these years? We welcomed you. You welcomed me as long as I was footing your daughter's bills and playing dad to a baby that isn't mine, I spat. Enough is enough, she brandished her phone. We'll sue for defamation, for cruelty, for... Do whatever you want, I said. Now get out. I slammed the door in their faces and locked it. My blood pounded in my ears like war drums. For a moment, I feared they might kick the door down, but eventually, I heard their footsteps retreat. Then, silence. 2 days later, as I was finalizing divorce paperwork with my lawyer, I got wind that Rachel had been discharged from the hospital. She was living temporarily with her parents, presumably so they could care for her and the baby. My lawyer, an older man named Mr. Beckman, was methodical, flipping through my stack of evidence, the cryobank forms, the procedure receipts, and a copy of Jason's birth certificate. Clear case, he said. We'll file for divorce on the grounds of adultery or at least fraudulent misrepresentation. The simplest approach is a petition to disclaim paternity. Paternity fraud. You can request an immediate DNA test as well, though the cryobank documents speak volumes. You also have the texts or appointments from that clinic. I nodded. Yes, I do. If Rachel contests, we can subpoena the cryobank. They'll confirm she used Ethan Anderson's semen. He pressed his lips together. Right, because there's also an ethical question with posthumous seeds usage. Did she have explicit permission from him? In some states, that's only allowed if the man consented prior to his death. This is going to be complicated, but you'll likely come out on top. She never told you any of this. She essentially forged your paternity. Now, in terms of child support, you absolutely should not be paying. The child is not biologically yours, and you can prove there was deception. You'll be severed from any paternal obligations. Though I felt some relief, there was also a sick heaviness in my heart. It's not as if I wanted to punish the baby. I genuinely loved him. But I couldn't see any alternative. Every fiber of trust, of fatherly love I'd had, felt ripped away by her deception. We wrapped up the session. He assured me that as soon as the papers were filed, Rachel would be served. I left his office in a daze of swirling emotions, anger, sadness, even a trace of longing for what we should have had, a normal, happy family. Not 3 days later, a knock came at my door around dusk. Expecting more drama from her parents, I yanked it open with annoyance. To my surprise, it was Rachel herself. She looked pale, with dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in days. She wore an oversized sweater, and for a moment, seeing her like that, battered by the storm of our broken marriage, triggered memories of simpler times. I forced steel into my spine, blocking the door. What do you want? I asked coldly. She seemed on the verge of tears, but her gaze was intense. Daniel, can we talk, please? 10 minutes, that's all I need. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to slam the door, but grudgingly I stepped aside. She slipped in, crossing the threshold with timid steps. I guided her to the living room. She perched on the edge of the couch, wringing her hands. You filed for divorce, she whispered. I got the papers. Yes, I said tersely, crossing my arms. She exhaled shakily, eyes brimming. Daniel, you have every reason to hate me. But let me explain. You refused the donor route, and I was terrified of never having a child. I wanted that so badly. You have no idea the loneliness I felt month after month when the test came back negative. And then, I remembered Ethan had preserved seeds before his accident. She broke off, swallowing. We'd planned to start a family, once upon a time, but never got the chance. I told myself it was still Ethan's donation. He wasn't a random stranger. I thought, maybe this could be a solution. If it worked, I'd have a baby. We would have a baby. You'd be a father. I told myself you'd never have to know, that you love him unconditionally. I clenched my jaw. You decided to combine your new marriage with your old one, as if I was worthless. Did you ever consider telling me the truth beforehand? Or was that not convenient for your plan? She sniffled. I was scared you'd leave me. So I reasoned that once the baby was here, you'd love him enough that you wouldn't care. I know it sounds insane. Maybe it is, but I was desperate. Desperate? So it justifies lying to me, forging my name on paternity documents, making me a legal father to another man's child? I stared at her with contempt. That's not how partnership works, Rachel. You betrayed me at the deepest level. She pressed a hand to her heart. I never stopped loving you, Daniel. Even now, I do love you. Please, if we can't salvage our marriage, can we at least try therapy? I can explain everything, and maybe we can come to some kind of arrangement for Jason. He deserves a father figure, and you've already bonded with... Enough, I snapped. I stepped back, tears stinging my own eyes. The child I bonded with doesn't exist. That was an illusion. I'm not Jason's father. He's Ethan's, or more accurately, a child of technology brought about by your lies. She stood, tears glistening, reached out toward me. Please, I recoiled. Don't touch me. A sob tore from her throat. If you want me to sign the divorce, I understand. But I'm begging you, don't sue me. Don't drag this through the courts. I can't handle it. The hospital bills, everything. My parents can't keep paying. I'll lose everything. I raised my eyebrows in shock at her plea. You can't handle it? What about me? My entire world turned upside down. I was deceived for over a year, humiliated in front of everyone. You had me dreaming about fatherhood, waiting to see my own features in that little boy. Then you let me discover the truth in the most revolting way. And you're telling me you can't handle the consequences? She wept silently. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. But please, we once loved each other. I did this for us. No, you did this for you. You never gave me the courtesy of a choice. My voice cracked with fury. Get out, Rachel. I'm not negotiating. Expect to be in court soon. She froze, heartbreak etched on her face. Then she trudged to the door, paused and whispered, I really did love you, Daniel. I wish you could see that. She left, quietly shutting the door behind her, leaving me in the emptiness. 3 weeks later, the divorce was well underway. Rachel had formally been served, and in a stroke of finality, I had her officially removed from the property deed. The place had always been in my name. The mortgage was under me alone, purchased before we married. The lawyer had swiftly processed an eviction notice against her as a protective measure, even though she was already gone. My message was loud and clear. Don't come back. She didn't. Her parents, in a last-ditch effort, tried to contact me, claiming I owed Rachel spousal support, threatening to smear my name in the local media. I recorded their calls and blocked their numbers, letting my lawyer handle any further harassment. The house felt hollow, but at least it was mine again, free of their accusations. In the weeks that followed, solitude engulfed me. The once lively house, filled with Jason's cries and laughter, now echoed with silence. It's better this way, I told myself. The alternative was living a lie. Late at night, I'd recall the moment I first held Jason, believing my prayers had been answered. That memory hurt the most. I'd let the sorrow and anger simmer until exhaustion finally took over. The court case was swift. With cryobank documents and proof of Rachel's deception, my name was removed from the birth certificate. Paternity fraud was recognized, freeing me from legal obligations. Rachel attended every hearing, frail and clutching Jason. Sometimes I'd glimpse his wide-eyed curiosity as he stared at the bright courthouse lights. He has no idea what's happening, but I reminded myself, he's not my child. The judge granted the divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and deception. Rachel wept as she left with Jason. Linda glared, and George was nowhere to be seen. I felt nothing, just a numb sense of closure. The gavel fell, and without a word, I walked away.